The following preview was begrudgingly approved for all audiences.
You're listening to Elevator Music.
Welcome back to Forward Thinking, presented by the Professional Collegiate League. I'm Ricky Vellante, and I'll be joined by my co-host, two-time NBA champion David West. As usual, we'll be talking about those challenging the status quo, doing social good, and bringing positive change to the world, while also talking a little bit of sports. In this episode, we'll be joined by Katrina Adams, former Chairperson, President, and CEO of the USTA, and current Chairperson of the ITF Fed and Gender Equality and Tennis Committees. Then we'll be joined by 12-year NBA veteran and creator of Block or Charge, Rex Chapman. Don't forget to subscribe to Forward Thinking on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube. You can also get more information at thepcleague.com/forwardthinking. We hope you enjoy the episode. And welcome back to Forward Thinking. In this episode, we have Katrina Adams joining us. Katrina is the former chairperson and president and CEO of the USTA and current chairperson of the Fed Cup and Gender Equality and Tennis Committees, as well as the VP of the ITF. Thanks for joining us, Katrina.
Thanks for having me.
So we wanted to start off going into your background as well as your own personal experience with coronavirus and how you overcame it.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be able to share any sports story that I can that can help others. But, a little background, first of all, as a, former professional tennis player, played on the WTA Tour for 12 years, started playing when I was 6 in inner city Chicago. Was lucky enough to have a couple pros that thought I had potential and was able to kind of hone my skills and keep elevating me to the next level, to the next teaching pro that could give me what I needed to succeed. Earned a college scholarship, played on the professional tennis tour, and got into the commentating and business side after that. As far as the virus is concerned, I contracted it in early March. My business has been on the road. In my travels, I picked it up. And fortunately for me, I had very minor symptoms. I only had body aches for a couple nights. I had a fever one night that broke while I was sleeping and was able to get a test. It was positive. And, was self-quarantining. So I feel great now. I had a week of feeling exhausted during that time. I was just tired every day. I was sleeping 10 to 12 hours, which I thought I was just catching up on lost years of sleep. Mm-hmm. But turned out it was some side effects. And now I'm, negative, and I've been donating my plasma. I have another blood bank appointment that's coming Monday.
Well, yeah, we're glad to hear you're doing better. Coronavirus has had an enormous impact on the world of sports, especially. We've talked about it with a few of our guests now, but looking forward, given your experience in running the USTA, as well as just your personal experience within sport and the business of sport, how do you think this is going to change things going forward?
Well, it's going to be challenging, as we've seen now with everything coming to a halt. I remember the day I was watching or attempting to watch a basketball game, and, they just cut everything right then and there. It was the right move, by the Commissioner Adam Silver and the league to get the players off the court, to, cancel all of the games for that night. And we see where we are. People thought it was ridiculous at that time, but you see where we are today. So every league, every sport is really peeling back the layers to try to figure out how to come back online safely. Tennis in particular is a global sport, as is the NBA and others, but tennis for sure. And, these players are coming from all over the world where they're on lockdown. The nation's borders are closed, or you're not able to fly in and out, as is golf, international. And golf will have been able to come up with a plan to start in mid-June. Professional tennis is definitely postponed through mid-July. And we're hoping by the end of August, it's time to fire up at the US Open here in New York, that we will be ready to go and cleared to at least have gatherings. But we have a bunch of different scenarios in place. Every day is a different day, and every week is a different week leading up to it. But I do see sports coming back, maybe with no fans. Baseball came online last night in Korea, so we'll see where it goes.
I've got a question. Why tennis? You said you're from Chicago, inner city Chicago. How do you end up playing tennis?
I stumbled on the sport. It was a summer program that the Martin Luther King Boys Club was hosting, and it was sponsored by a police program at that time. My brothers were in the program. It was a walking distance from our home.
Right.
We were members of that club. So I was actually too young to be in the program. I was just kind of outside the fence for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And, these kids had no talent whatsoever. And I was a visual learner, and I was itching to get on the court. But once the first time I hit the ball and felt it on my racket and the strings and hit it over the net into the court, I was hooked.
Right.
And it was just something that, it's interesting because when I started the sport, I started in my community. The next summer I played at a different location, but everybody was Black. So
wow.
I didn't know anything about the sport not being all that inclusive back in the 70s.
Right.
And even the first tournament I played was called the ATA Nationals, which was down in New Orleans, and which was everyone was Black. So
right.
as I got better and started playing in local tournaments, I realized that really wasn't the case.
Right.
But I loved it from the start.
Right. That's great. I've always had a different level of respect for individual athletes. I could never play an individual sport. I know that, from inside my own being, because I just feel like, particularly watching tennis, I feel like tennis players are always exposed. So what are some of the things that individual sports build in athletes versus some of the things that, we rely on in team sports?
Yeah, what tennis offers and provides, the life skills that we learn are those skills that we obviously take throughout our lives. But, it's building your self-confidence, your self-esteem. It's learning how to manage your own time. It's learning how to be dedicated and disciplined, self-motivated, because you have to be out. You have to want to go to practice. You're out there, you're doing the drills on your own. Yeah, you have a coach, but really learning the skills and understanding the psychology of the sport, because it's just not, just hitting the ball and running. It's the tactics that are involved and figuring out a puzzle. And that's, for someone like me, it's interesting. I look at many of our champions and past champions of the sport. A lot of them are Leos. I'm a Leo. But, our self-esteem is already out here when it comes to how we're wired. But to be able to go out and compete one-on-one, our sport has been named like a gladiator sport.
Right.
But I love that, just trying to figure out what to do and how to do it against one-on-one. Although, I was a great doubles player. I loved having someone on my side of the net, that I'm high-fiving, that I'm collaborating with and working well with. And I grew up playing, basketball and softball and all the other team sports, but tennis was something that I just excelled in, and it's taken me far.
Right. That's great. I've always had an affinity for individual athletes, because I think, like, when you lose in basketball, we kind of disperse the blame. Like, well, he didn't do his job for a minute. I didn't do my job for 3 minutes. The coach kind of didn't have his.
So I can only blame myself.
Right. And I've always felt like that's a tough situation to be in.
I can only blame myself. And, and I'm competitive at heart. So I think also too, having that individual drive, although I'm competing against someone else, I'm really challenging myself. Every time I go on the court to get better and to do things differently and to be able to raise my level. And that competitive nature, I've taken into golf. I love trying to get better with every shot, every round.
Once you wrapped up your career, first started with CBS Sports Network on the commentating side, but eventually transitioned into becoming the president, chairman, and CEO of USTA, where you were the first former player, first African-American, and the youngest person to ever serve as president, if I got that all correctly.
Yeah, that is correct.
So, you've been trailblazing, and believe you were also involved with diversity and inclusion while you were at the USTA. When it comes to a sport that, at least at the professional level, tends to maybe not have the most diverse base, what were some of the key components around those initiatives in increasing the diversity in the sport?
Yeah, the USTA has spent, a couple decades really elevating their diversity and inclusion and bringing more people into the game. I think that our sport has always been diverse, but I think the opportunities of competing on the highest level have been minimal. But it's not because they weren't welcome. particularly in the open era, but more so because of what it takes to actually be able to compete at the highest level, the travel that's involved, the tournaments that you have to play, and the expense that comes with it. So it kind of excluded the have-nots, if you will. And if you had an opportunity to have a sponsor, or you were just a phenom like the Williams sisters, then you were able to break in. I wasn't one of those haves. I was a have-not, but I had people that were supporting me to help me get to the level that I got to. But I would say, when Venus and Serena in particular came on in the mid 90s and late 90s, it really spawned a big desire for other young people to say, wow, if they can do it, I can do it too. And the parents that said, wow, maybe this sport is for us. And you can see, yes, the numbers aren't great, but we have a lot of, on the women's side in particular, a lot of professional Black players that are out there, from Serena, Venus, Sloane, Madison, Madison Keys, Taylor Townsend, Coco Gauff, and many others, Asia Muhammad. And, they are an inspiration to the next generation. Francis Tiafoe is a young man that's out there right now, who's top, 60 in the world, I think last year at one point. And it's just a little tougher from the male perspective because, they're constantly seeing the LeBron James and the Russell Wilsons, on television and every commercial, everything, and they want to be like them. The Last Dance is on. I grew up in the MJ era, so everybody wanted to be like Mike. But so that's where our Black boys have gone. There are a lot of them in our sport on the junior level that are doing really well or playing collegiate tennis. And it's just a matter of that hunger to really come out and compete. But also you have to have the means to be able to travel the world and be successful.
So what's the age at which, if there is an age limit, that you can professionalize within tennis?
Physically, the girls mature a lot quicker than the boys. And so in the 80s and 90s, you saw where the players were turning pro at the age of 14 and 15. You had Venus and Martina Hingis and Anna Kournikova and Lucic. They were all 14. They came out at the same time. Phenomenons, Jennifer Capriati. And over time, what the WTA did in their sports science department is really started to do a little more research for the physical and the mental part of these players. They had data over the years to see how these players responded. And so they started to kind of phase them in more. You could only play so many tournaments at 14, 15, 16. And then at 17, you could play a full schedule. You have to think about it. It's not just the physical part of playing the matches. It's really traveling all over the world in a business. You become your own CEO of yourself and how you're performing, you're training, dealing with the media, the travels. Think about your 14 or 15-year-old being thrust into that environment and the psychological effects it can have on them long term, or maybe burn them out at an earlier age. So when you see someone like a Coco Gauff, who has just emerged in the last year at 15, the phenom that she is, she's been limited to the amount of tournaments that she could play. And she's done really well in them, and her ranking has gotten up top 60 in the world, maybe top 50 at the end, I'm not sure. But she is limited. But on her birthday, I think she just turned 16, she now has a chance to play a couple more tournaments this year, and she really won't be able to play a full schedule until 17. The men on the other side, physically, they just can't really come out and ball with the players that are out there. And so, they're really 18, 19 before they really have an opportunity to go full speed ahead and maintain that.
Right. Yeah. Coco Gauff, her confidence is through the roof, just in terms of, when she's on that stage. Again, that's probably one of the more impressive things about tennis. And so what about selling the game? Is the media responsible when you talk about, young Black men and who are great athletes? Is the media bear some responsibility in exposure and making sure that there's sort of this equal exposure for athletes to be able to pick?
I think it is. I think the media is definitely could step up a little bit more in many ways. But, when I mentioned how, we see more of the LeBrons and the Russells and everyone else, those are also sponsors, right? So those are sponsor paid commercials that are out there for whatever product that they're endorsing. And, a lot of our young kids, they're obviously not getting those endorsements to be able to buy those television spots because you've got to have that name to sell it, right?
Right.
So we have to find other ways, whether it's via social media or whether it's just interested parties that want to promote these young men and women more to give them that exposure that they need. But at the end of the day, we are an individual sport, and it's a matter of really making sure that we perform. If we don't win, we don't excel, we don't move up in our ranking, we don't get to the next tournament, yada, yada, yada. So it's a process in our sport. We're not being drafted. It's not like you get on a team, kind of hide behind everybody while you're developing your talent and then excel. Or, you made the greatest assist on that, the biggest shot of the game, passing it to your teammate. I got to go out there and perform as an individual, and that makes it challenging.
It sounds like when you're laying out this process and this transition that a young tennis player will go through as they're professionalizing, that the college component of it that you see in traditional sports may not be a priority or even a piece of that transition.
No, it's definitely part of our pathway. It's something that we definitely promote within the USTA. Martin Blackman, who's our general manager of player development, has implemented a pathway through college when he first came on board, 10 years ago, probably now. But I went to college. I played in college. I played at Northwestern University, earned a college scholarship, but I left after 2 years because my talent took me to the level where I could go out and play professionally. But I wouldn't trade that in for the world. I mean, the experience that I got, not only through tennis at school, but just as an individual, being able to grow and mature, I think helped me be successful, not only for the next 12 years on tour, but obviously it prepared me to what I've done once I've gotten off the tour. So I think collegiate tennis has definitely gotten tougher. It's gotten better because a lot of these players that were thinking about going pro at earlier ages are realizing that, hey, I need to keep developing, keep getting stronger, get an education, and then move forward. You have very few Coco Gauffs,
right?
Or Katie McNally, who is her doubles partner, who is also, she tweeted the other day, hey, just took my last high school exam. So, just graduated from high school, and these girls are traveling the world at a full base. So it's been very challenging for them.
So, sort of keeping with that theme, I just want to know what could you tell a young kid? Maybe this is like a 2 or 3 part question, but what is the impact that choosing sport has had, on your life, sort of in the overarching theme? I think a lot of times young kids make the decision like I'm not gonna go into sports because they think that the only benefit of sport is just what you get out of it, as opposed to some of the experiences you can have, the avenues and doors that can be opened, and the directions it could potentially send your life. And so what is the overarching impact of sports in your life, and then how would you sort of explain that to a young kid who's on the fence of whether or not they want to get in this, not necessarily a specific sport like tennis or anything, but just the general idea of getting into sport?
Yeah, I think sport is crucial for anybody. And, I think when you're a kid, you should be playing multiple sports. I think you should be trying your skills at whether it's soccer, tennis, football, basketball, whatever it is. I think kids need to understand that, first of all, it's going to prolong their life to start to teach them early healthy habits, being fit. But also they get to learn to work with other people, with other kids. You have to collaborate. You have to partner. You have to work together in order to succeed, to accomplish that goal, whether it's scoring, whether it's stopping someone from scoring, whether it's hitting a great serve in tennis or making that buzzer beater shot. Whatever it is, it's working together. And these are all life skills that carry on throughout your entire life. When you're filling out your high school applications, if you're not going to a public school or you're going to a college and you're filling out your application, you don't have to be a collegiate level athlete, but showing that you played sport for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, so that you were committed, that you have some certain level of discipline, and level of dedication that they want to see in that student that's coming to their institution. And then beyond that, a lot of these businesses want to know if you have played a sport. They'd much rather hire an athlete than, it doesn't have to be a professional athlete, but an athlete than a non-athlete, because they know that you are a team player.
That's an important point.
Understand what it takes to work together to be successful, and that you have a certain drive about yourself, that you're ambitious. You love winning, but you understand that losing makes you work harder to thrive and to work towards that higher goal. And that's what these businesses and companies want. They want that person. So I think for any kid that's out there, I don't have anything against esports. Right. But, because it's making them competitive. They obviously have a certain vision that I don't have. I love playing video games back in the day. But just being out and being active and being physical is a completely different level of commitment, just sitting on the couch or wherever you are playing these video games.
Yeah, I feel like in my personal experience, like going through law school, especially the bar exam, I remember how much people struggled in preparation for the bar. Whereas for me, it was like, all right, here's your daily practice routine that you have to go do. You have to hold yourself individually accountable. And then I just remember going into like the final bar prep on campus component right before the exam. And there were people like legit just breaking down. Like they had totally had it. The 2 months had gotten to them, whereas I was just like, all right, we've been prepping for the game. Next week's the game. All right, let's go ahead.
Yeah,
let's get it done.
Preparation, that level of preparation really is the pressure that we are learning to deal with, and the pressure of competing, the pressure of what's the pressure if you actually win? What are the expectations of you at that point? And then what are the pressures of you if you've lost? Because, okay, that means I have to work harder. I didn't prepare as best this week as I could have. I got to prepare better for next week. The same thing in going in and taking your exams, no matter what level of school you are. It's teaching you that discipline and to have a schedule, if you will.
Now, circling back on your personal experience, you mentioned having gone through Northwestern, as well as the mental preparation and all of this that goes into the professional transition of a tennis player. What about the influence of amateurism, and how does that potentially impact that transition? Because it sounds like, given events hosted by an external entity where purses are involved and endorsements are involved and things like that, that could add a whole nother layer that a traditional team sport athlete playing for Northwestern's football team, for example, may not have to deal with.
Yeah, so I mean, in tennis, it's easy to become a professional. You just accept the money that for your amateur status, right? So anyone can say I'm a professional tennis player. That just means that you're no longer an amateur. However, there are different layers. So we have what we call the World Tennis Tour, which is an ITF global tour for entry-level players trying to make it to the big leagues, if you will. So they have their pro circuit events. Total purse is like $15,000. That means if you win the tournament, you've won $1,000, right? Well, you had to travel, stay at a hotel, eat, etc. So you're not really making money there. It's really earning the points to get you to the next level of 25,000, to the next level of 50,000, 100,000, etc. You don't really, in my opinion, I didn't turn pro until I was in the main draw of the Australian Open in 1988. In 1987, I won the NCAAs in doubles. I knew everyone was saying, Kat, it's time, you need to go out on tour, etc. And in the summer times, I've been playing these tournaments, these challengers, earning points year over year. And the points only stay on for 52 rolling weeks. So every 52 weeks, whatever I earn this week rolls off the ranking. So I have to defend those points every year. But if I play a week this year that I didn't play last year, I'm adding points, right? Or if I lost in the first round, last year and I win a tournament, I'm adding points. So therefore my ranking is going up. After my sophomore year, I played the normal summer circuit, did well, my ranking was progressing, but I took the fall year off because we're on quarters, took the fall year off at school with the permission of my coach and the athletic director. Said, let me play this fall as an amateur, which means I could only get reimbursed for my expenses, but I couldn't take over and above and beyond what it cost me to get to that tournament. But I could add the points. And if I like playing week after week outside of the summer and my ranking's going up, then I'll turn pro in January. I'll give you your scholarship back. But if I don't like it, I'm coming back in January. We'll never have this conversation again. I'll finish out, finish school. Well, I did really well. I got to 104 in the world, which is pretty darn good when you're an amateur. Got a direct entry into a Grand Slam. I said, okay, now it's time to turn pro, because this is the level that I want to be at. Grand Slam on the main WTA tour.
Right.
I didn't want to turn pro in the minor leagues, if you will, scraping and scrapping every week, because the pressures of winning, are the same. But if I'm up here, I have the ability to make more money to pay those expenses. If I'm just playing in the lower circuits and I'm making a few $100s a week, then, I'm going to burn myself out mentally just as much as I am physically trying to get to the top. So it's a lot different than being in a team sport where you're drafted, you have a guaranteed, salary, and then you can make your bonuses along the way.
Do you think that with the movement towards permission of name, image, and likeness endorsement deals and things like that in college sports, that would help in particular individual sports like a tennis or a golf?
I'm not sure if it's going to help tennis and golf. You can see where athletes have been fighting for this in the team sports like football and basketball in particular, because they are the revenue bearing sports. I'm still on the cusp here of if I actually agree with that. But part of it is, a lot of these cats are going to school and really not going to class because they could care less. They're just looking at it as another year or two that they can get by, to get better, to go into the draft and hopefully get drafted. If they don't, they've lost their opportunity to get a good education so that they could live a somewhat productive and successful life outside of sport. There's a small percentage of athletes that are able to turn pro and be drafted. On the flip side of that, I know that many of our athletes are coming from communities where they're just barely getting by. And just getting a college scholarship is not enough. You do need money while you're in school. You do need to have extra cash to get something to eat when your cafeteria is closed, or just to go to the movies, or just to be normal, or order pizza late at night. And many of these kids don't have those means to do that. So I totally get it. And I understand that these athletes are also the ones that are selling television and products for these institutions that are making all the money, and they should be rewarded in some form or fashion. I just don't know at what level that is. But I don't think it's going to help our tennis players and golfers and lacrosse and other sports like that. If the university is willing to share the pot with all student athletes, then okay. But that they're a long way from trying to figure out what that formula is. And but it's a different era today than we were 20 years ago when I was in school. But I do remember being in school, there were weeks that I'm like, hey, I can't order pizza. I can't go, to Burger King tonight. I gotta eat what's in the dorms, or kind of piggyback on a fellow student.
So I think that's just a reality, with the majority of the environments that guys and girls are in college. And again, it's something that I think we just all have to work toward changing and fixing, so the athletes aren't in these situations.
Yeah.
And so just to wrap up, I believe it's next year you're going to be releasing a book, Own the Arena. I was curious as to, what it's about, what inspired it, and just in general, where people can also get more information.
Yeah, thank you. So it's called Own the Arena, Making a Difference and Succeeding While Being the Only One. And
I like that.
You can get where the only one is.
Yeah.
And it's really, hopefully, it will inspire people to be to follow their own passion and their own dream, to be able to realize that they belong at the table and in the room and in different arenas that will help them be successful, and to not be shy about voicing their opinions and their knowledge and sharing their knowledge, but also being able to understand that it takes patience, it takes time, it takes collaboration through various mediums to be able to succeed. It takes hard work, it takes a lot of preparation. And so I talk about using the things that I've learned through my sport from a child that is transferred over into business arenas and different meetings and spaces, how it may resonate with you in some form or fashion. So it was due out in July. It's now been postponed until March of next year due to COVID-19. Our summer of tennis is slowly pushing into the fall almost. And so those opportunities to be able to do book signings and talks have been diminished. And so hopefully next March, when we start up with the tournament in Indian Wells and Miami, et cetera, we bring the book out and I'll be able to have more opportunities to go and meet and do book signings. But you can go to my website, KatrinaMAdams.com, to find the book, a link to the book there, or you could go to HarperCollinsPublishing.com or Amazon.com. Any book link, find it, and it'll be out now in March. But I am hoping to get those pre-sales up so that it can come out on the bestseller list. And I think it'll be an enjoyable read for everyone. It's for everyone. It's not just for athletes or business people. It's not just for women or people of color. I think everyone will be able to get something out of the book.
Nice. Good deal. Before we let you go, I ask the same couple questions to every guest. I tell people all the time I grew up in the 80s, and when I started to become aware of things, figuring out a morning routine was a big thing on the horizon. And just for our listening audience, if you have a morning routine, what that morning routine is, what are the first things you do in the morning to get your day going?
Right now, it's about coffee.
Okay.
It's right here.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's changed as I've gotten older. I am I like to work out in the morning, but with our gyms being closed now, why I ordered a Peloton, because I need to get a sweat in. My knees are bad, so I can't run. I do a lot of walking. I'll do some long walks, and I live in an area where it's kind of up and down, which is good. So it's giving me the strengthening and the endurance or cardio workout that I need. But, unfortunately, in the era of our digital devices, the first thing I do when I wake up is checking what text did I get overnight or in the morning, the emails, and I'm scrolling through to see what I need to respond to, if at all, so that I know how to get my day. But I like to have a to-do list. I check my phone at night to know if appointments I have.
Right.
I'll do my to-do list to try to go through that during the day and get going.
Good deal. And my final question, what I call a fail up moment. So where were you in your life, in your career, where something didn't go right for you? You didn't get the result or the outcome you wanted, but it didn't set you back. It actually sprung you forward. So where was that fail up moment? I typically find that people have these moments, people who have had experience and been through different channels of life have these fail up moments. And I think that we can all learn from them. So where was that moment for you?
No, absolutely. I would say for me, it's really transitioning from one career to the next. When I stopped competing, I stayed in the sport by being a national coach. So I was still in the same arena, the same environment, just wearing a different hat. But when that coaching position ended, our entire department was being restructured and we were all released. It was that aha moment, that wake up, to say, okay, what's next? And
right.
I literally threw my rackets in the closet for about 3 months, never touched them for 3 months because I've never had a break from going out. But I also had to say, okay, what's next for me? And that's where I had to fall back on the skill sets that I had and the knowledge that I had. Wanted to go into commentating. I'd studied communications at Northwestern University. And I set out on a journey to figure out how to get my foot in the door in that arena. It ended up being with the Tennis Channel when they flipped their switched to go on air in April of 2003. So I stopped coaching in October of 2002. The next few months, tried to figure that out, had a meeting with them in late November of 2002, and got a call from them in April when they were ready to go. And that was my transition to the next profession, of which I'm still, on air and commentating. Right. So that was that fail up moment, I would say. I lost an opportunity and a job over here, but it made me take a deep breath, sit back, go inwardly, and figure out what it is that I really wanted to do so that I could move forward.
Good deal.
Thank you.
A lot of insight there.
Yeah, I'd say a common theme from this entire discussion has been the value of your education and never underestimating that. It sounds like you've had to rely on that component, whether it's transitioning from one career to the next or just in general from day to day. So I have one final question, then we'll let you go, Katrina, which is, we have the go-ahead from medical professionals. What are you most looking forward to doing post-coronavirus?
Going out to a restaurant and having a lovely meal and a beautiful glass of wine. Now, I haven't skipped on the glass of wine. Now, I would say I've learned a lot in these last 2 weeks of what I really like and what I don't like. But just, really just connecting with friends. And I live alone, and it's difficult. This is the way that I interact with people mostly. I am getting out more now, having had the virus, recovered, have the antibodies. I'm a little more free. Have a little more freedom about at least getting out and about, going for these walks. And I even got to play golf this past weekend without fear, if you will. So I'm still making sure that I'm wearing my mask and gloves when I'm going into public places, because you still don't want to bring the germs back into your environment. But it's really just reconnecting with friends and, and having a great conversation, in person.
Right.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. We really appreciate it, Katrina. Again, for our viewers, be sure to check out Own the Arena in March 2021.
Pre-order. Look at
Pre-order in the meantime.
Pre-order.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. It's been a great conversation, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks for having me. I enjoy the conversation, and thank you, Ricky, and thank you, David. Really appreciate being on here.
Thank you for joining us. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Forward Thinking Podcast. We've got another special guest, 12-year NBA veteran, all-around good guy, one of the first guys I met, starting this NBA journey years and years ago. Rex Chapman, University of Kentucky. He was the 8th pick in the NBA draft. Welcome to Forward Thinking.
Thanks for having me, D. West. You're one of my favorites. You know that. But, yeah, I remember that. You came in. I think you worked out with Josh Smith. Young guy. You spent years on campus. He was coming right from high school. And he wasn't ready for you.
Right. Thanks for joining us, man. We, on this podcast, we try to keep the conversation light, forward, and progressive. Want to just get your opinion on a few things. To start, we want to talk about your background. So can you give us a little bit about your background, your basketball background, personal background?
Yeah. I'm born and raised in Kentucky. Grew up in Owensboro, Kentucky. I played every sport growing up. Football, swam on the swim team, football, tennis, golf. It was the sport I was playing in. Baseball. Ended up probably being better at basketball than those other ones, and stopped playing the rest. Was, a McDonald's All-American player, All-American at UK, and then a lottery pick, played in the NBA. And right after playing in the NBA, I had some painkiller issues. 7 surgeries my last 3 years of playing basketball, and spent about 14 years battling in and out of rehab, some with pain addiction. So, at this point, I'm 5 years with no painkillers, and life is pretty good.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
That's it. I don't know much else. You guys go from here. I'll tell you whatever you want to know.
So Rex, we you and I have known each other really my whole career, and I've always respected your opinion and your analysis on different things that went on while I was in the NBA. And I think one of the more points of contention now is like the mash and the mix of eras, right? So even when I was coming up, because social media wasn't a part of the equation, we didn't really know what a lot of the guys from the past era thought about what we were doing and how we were playing. And I think what's happened with the social media thing is all of a sudden we see that there's a huge difference between where some of the older guys feel where the state of the game is, what younger guys feel, like guys who I feel like I'm in the middle because I was kind of part of the old school era and I played that way, but I played all the way into the new era. What is your idea, your take on this idea of basketball eras and where we are?
D. West, it's a great question. I got to tell you, we've all been sitting around watching The Last Dance for a little while. I was watching Carolina and Maryland play the other day on TV with Lenny Bias and Michael James Worthy and those guys, and it doesn't even look like basketball now. Like I played in that era. I came up playing in that same kind of era. Teams playing 2-3 zone, 5 guys in the paint, everything congested. It doesn't look anything like it does now. And when I watch the guys play now, they can do so much more with their offhand than we all could do. Also, guys dribble the ball way better than we used to. We used to, it's the whole take what the defense gives you. That's all we were taught. So we would get a guy off balance and try to beat him. Now the guys got prepackaged dribble moves. I mean, what? That's amazing. It's amazing to me. So when I watch guys today, and everybody shoots it way better than we did with better range, I love the era that I came up in. Yeah, and you would have fit right into that era with the way you played. Also, that being said, LeBron would fit into that era with the way he played. He'd have been dominant in that era. Right. And people would, for whatever reason, the older we get, the more we think our era was the best and the toughest and the most and all that. And look, all I know is the league it's doing better than it's ever been. I know this is a weird time now. I feel bad that I made more money in my career than Dr. J made in his career. Right. It's blows me away. But now that Stefan's going to make way more money than MJ made playing basketball, that blows me away. But it's all great. Everyone's laying the groundwork for the next. Right. And we can't play forever. I was lucky to play in 3 decades, the end of the 80s, all through the 90s and into 2000. And the game really changed while I was in it. I remember this for a fact. I remember I was thinking it's about time. And this tells you where guys are. Where their heads are. It was my last year or second to last year, and a young guy came out in a preseason game with headphones on to shoot around. And I was like, headphones? It's time for me to go. That young guy was Derek Fisher. Wow. Yeah, and I was like, man, guys just out here messing around now. When I think about it, I work out every day with headphones on. Right. I didn't, and it would have been great to go out there and have a distraction where I could shoot and not hear the fans and all that stuff. So it's not right or wrong. It's just different. And I love what I see with the game right now. It's a beautiful game, the way it's played. I know there's more dribbling than passing. It used to be more execution and pass related. But these guys are way better than we were. You think about it. MJ last night on TV, you saw how he dribbled full court with pressured, right? Right. We all were that way. Not all of us, but you put us in our offhand and make us go 5 dribbles, it might kick it out of bounds. That's all. I love this era. I love our era. And I have found out that the greats in every era, and usually those guys who are all-star players, they'll play and succeed in any era.
Yeah, right.
Rex, when you finished your playing career, you got the opportunity to transition into a couple of different front office positions. That's not something that every player gets the opportunity to do, or whether it's successful or unsuccessful. Not many guys get that. What was that transition like for you, and going through that, switching from on the court to getting the opportunity to scout and be in the decision-making process regarding rosters?
I was very lucky, and as you guys know, it's really about relationships. I developed a really good relationship with the Suns ownership and their front office while I played there my last 3 or 4 years. And I felt very fortunate to go right into scouting, and from scouting pretty quickly into personnel. In fact, I was in Denver when David, you were a young player at the time, playing in New Orleans with Chris, and we played you guys playoff series, a pretty good playoff series. I don't know if you and Chris were on the best terms at the time, but I remember Terry. I remember talking to Terry Koffler and those guys, and they brought me up in Charlotte. But yeah, I felt very fortunate to be able to do that. It's different though. Nothing. There's nothing like playing. But second to playing, I think, is having some kind of imprint on a team where you based on everything you've learned and seen and all your coaches over the years, all the experiences you've had. I think it's fascinating trying to put the pieces to a puzzle together that you can make something work. And most of the time it's about chemistry. And, sometimes you make the wrong move and it blows up in your face. Sometimes you can make the smallest little insignificant move and it changes everything. And we had a pretty good run in Denver there for 4 or 5 years, but it's different. And, it's also in basketball, we're all kind of our own boss a little bit.
Right.
Going right into front office and having to learn, really office etiquette and just a lot of things that we never think about, not cussing all the time,
right.
In front of people.
Right.
All of that stuff. There's a learning curve there. And, I kind of, after a while, it got to be a little monotonous and I felt like I needed something else. But yeah, I was very fortunate and I feel very fortunate this day that I've got some good relationships around the league with people at a lot, that run a lot of the teams in the league, and makes me feel connected a little bit.
Yeah. Do you have an idea when you think about, again, rosters and teams? Do you have a process you might take in terms of decision making? Like when you think about making decisions, is there a process that you go through to say, okay, I'm making the right decision?
I think the one thing the main thing you have to do is you've got to know who your coach will coach and who he will like. You can get a guy in there you believe in. Look, everybody can tell if Allen Iverson can play. Everybody can tell if, David West can play. You go in the gym, he's the best player. Not everybody can tell if, the eighth guy on the team can play.
Right.
But you might have an idea. Say it's Anthony Carter, we a throwback name from back in the day. He was a personal favorite of mine. I had him in Minnesota. I knew what he did. I knew George Karl would like him. And George did. Almost played him too much at times, right?
Right.
And so, and then we'd get a guy like Reggie Evans. George wouldn't play him. Just wouldn't play him.
Right.
So a lot of times you gotta have a good relationship with your coach. You got to believe in him and believe in what he's telling you, believe in what he's teaching. And if you do that, I think you can find the right mix of players, because it does you no good at all to draft a guy, if you believe in your coach, to draft a guy that you don't think he's going to play or going to like or fit his mindset.
We talked about that a little bit when we had Baron Davis on a couple of weeks ago, talking about organizational culture and building from the bottom up and understanding that everybody's got to buy into the same philosophy. And so interesting to hear that from the front office perspective of how critical that is.
Yeah. And I think, David, you didn't play in Miami at all, did you?
No.
Okay. I spent a year there, and I spent time in Charlotte and in Washington and in Phoenix. Miami is here. They set the bar, in my opinion. Now, I didn't play in San Antonio. They were good. Jerry Sloan's Utah Jazz were great. We talk about culture and everything. Miami really opened my eyes, and I'd been in the league for 7 years already. I learned. I was making money for 7 years, and they called me a professional, but I wasn't a pro until I got to Miami.
Wow.
I don't think I approached it like a pro until I got to Miami. Played on a lot of bad teams. We squeaked into the playoffs. It was so much fun. But I think the main thing was you have to be on the same page. And if you're not on the same page, they'll get somebody in there who is on the same page. Right. They believe in defense. As long as you do your damnedest defensively, stay in shape. If you can play, you're going to play for them. And it brought back a lot of the joy I had. And whenever I make decisions to this day, or was making decisions in front offices, a big thought process that I go through is what goes on down in Miami, because Pat really sets the stage. He believes 100% in Eric Spoelstra, and Mickey Harrison believes 100% in Pat Riley. So that I think is vital. And go to San Antonio, Pop, their owner, R.C. Buford. When it's like that, they keep the same people there for a reason, because they do it right. And I think you always got to look around at your peers and see who's doing well, and try to pick up what you can from them.
Nice.
Shifting gears a little bit to now, you went into broadcasting, and now what I personally, given my age, I know you best for is your short form content.
That's so
how did all that come about?
It's so crazy.
And just for context, before you answer, Rex, do you remember? I remember one of the first times you posted, I was like, "Yo, this is what I tweeted you this is brilliant." You were like, "Bro, it's bullshit."
I know it's so dumb. Honest to goodness, I've told this before now a few times, but I wanted off of social media. The political climate got me down. It was so toxic, and there's so much bullshit on social media that I wanted off. But, to kind of do what I do, you need a little bit of social media presence to do, NBA TV or University of Kentucky basketball or whatever it might be. And I saw a stupid video of a bunch of dolphins swimming toward the ocean, and a guy paddleboarding, and the one dolphin just jumped out of the water, hit him straight in the chest, and I said, "That's a fucking charge," out loud. and it kind of made me laugh. I tweeted it out there, and people thought it was funny. So I started doing that, and it really took the pressure off. I felt, this is great. I don't have to think about anything. I don't have to be clever or anything like that. Just put this stuff out there. And then after a few months of doing that, you can only show so much of people getting jacked up that it's just, it's white noise. So I do remember seeing a video though of a little dog that was dribbling one of them bouncy balls real fast. Right. And I put out, "Yo, Kyrie, I'm open." And people thought that was hilarious. So, but it was dogs. And then who doesn't love dogs? And my dog's right there. And we all love dogs. So I thought, all right, let's do some dogs, put out some feel good stuff. And really that's kind of taken over. And I like that a lot.
Right. And I think it's important. I get the notification. I tell it's one of the things I have to see on a daily basis, just to see what you found. Man. And so how important is that, to you, to know that you're kind of, maybe you didn't intend for it to have the kind of impact, but one of the things that I think I enjoy most about it is when I read the comments, sometimes you really make someone's day. I know. And what does that do for you?
Oh man, D West, going back to college, I probably, battled some depression and stuff like that. And all through my career, and it probably led to more injuries and whatnot. And over the last few years, especially counseling and a couple rehab stints that I went in, I had to really do a lot of, trying to be introspective, a lot of soul searching. And at this point, man, because again, I was a lottery pick. I played for 12 years. I made a bunch of money. And 14 years after I was finished playing, I lived in my car for a little bit, lived on people's couches in LA for a couple years. So I know what it feels like to be down and to feel hopeless and helpless. One of the great parts about this thing is it does help me to feel better. It keeps my mind going and stuff. But, about 2 months ago, I just put out a tweet saying, "Hey, I partnered with my Opioid Foundation with a nonprofit, and said we're going to raise money for COVID relief, first responders, food banks, PPE. And within like 2 days, we raised $200,000. And so we've been giving PPE or giving money to nonprofits in New York, New Jersey, other hot spots around the country. We got more to give. That stuff makes me feel good. Also, I've got 4 children, 27, 25, 21, and 19. And for the 2 younger ones' lives, most of their lives, I wasn't very good. Like I was really from the painkillers. I was there, but I wasn't there.
Right.
So I'm trying to do things differently for them, for me, for those people I've disappointed in the past. I wish somebody would have told. I always felt like life was charmed. I always did. And I knew it wasn't. I knew I wasn't this sort of all-American guy that, University of Kentucky. And so that always kind of bothered me. It's been a little bit liberating to know that I can just be myself and people know I'm flawed as I try to, improve and get better every day. It took some of the pressure off, I think.
Nice, man. We appreciate you sharing that with us. I honestly do.
Good. All good. Yeah, guys, I'm pretty much an open book. I hope I go out and speak on this stuff now and try to, because I know, I remember sitting in rehab. True story. I was in rehab. I was just fresh off a detox. I was in rehab. I had just got out of detox. And I mean, I'm there, but I'm not there. I'm crying and I'm just, it's awful. They're probably still talking about me on the news, but a longtime friend of mine, Rick Pitino, came to see me. I was in rehab in Louisville and came to see me, and he said something to me. I said, man, nobody's going to want to touch me. I'm toxic. He's like, Rex, you're going to make something out of this story. I said, this is not my story. Well, guess what? It's my story. But what he said, and what's funny is that I know speaking, I can say a lot of stuff, but there might be that one thing in there that I do say that someone latches onto, like this story with Rick. Rick told me right there in that moment, I'll never forget it. He's been through some shit too. And he said, listen, man, for the next little while, you're going to eat a lot of shit. He said, that shit's going to be about the size of a beach ball. And he said, but if you keep doing the right thing, before long, that shit's going to be the size of a basketball, and then a softball, and then a baseball, and then a ping pong ball, and then a pebble, and I was like, no way. But I hung on to it. And whether that makes sense or not, I don't know. It made sense to me in that moment. Right. So I've hung on it, and I've hung on to several other things that people say. So I don't take lightly, when I go to speak to groups or to people that they're not listening, because I think they are. When you're down and out, you know how it is. Remember when you couldn't make a jump shot and you walk into the arena, and if the janitor said, hey, man, you're not doing this, you'd be like, oh, yeah, let me try what he says. You listen to anybody when you're desperate.
Right.
Yeah. And again, appreciate you sharing that. This month, especially being Mental Health Month, we've been trying to incorporate that in for our audience.
Another part of that is like right now. Look, we all get used to going to work out where we work out and, going to gyms. And one thing that's really sort of kept me sane the last 4 or 5 years, I found swimming again. And so I swim 5 or 6 days a week just it clears my head. It's good for me, all that. But not now, not for the last 2 months. Mm-hmm. And, I'm getting out, I'm walking, my body's not great. I can't jog. So I'm walking a bunch, but that, it hurts my knees, hurts my ankles. It doesn't feel like swimming to me. So look, man, we're all going through this to a degree. You got to sacrifice for other people and try to do what we can do to stay healthy. But man, a lot of people are out there struggling with this mentally, socially. It's an odd time. It's an odd time.
What would you say? And again, this is we appreciate you opening up. But what would you say to a young guy dealing with something, dealing with some mental health issue? Maybe he's not as confident. Maybe dealing with depression. We've been through that moment where you feel like you're working, but maybe what you're doing is not good enough. What would you share with a young person right now who's in that situation?
Now, and especially in the last couple years, and the NBA, I'm proud of the NBA for becoming the first pro league to have mental health expert. You got to have one. Every team got to have one with the team. And I think that's huge. Now, it wasn't, I remember in the late 80s, a guy named Willie Burton, really good player, played for Miami. Willie was real inconsistent, real up and down. He got like 50 in a game once and got like 2 the next night. And he came out and said, you know, I suffer from depression. And people killed him for it. Like, the media was relentless. Like, what's he got to be depressed about? Not that depression, right? And so there was a big stigma with it, and there still kind of is. The other part about that for young people, you know, especially if you're playing sports, a lot of times the recommendation might be for some kind of medication. Well, as you know, athletes, a lot of times they are very resistant to that because they feel like they need to be what's gotten them there, right? So there's a bit of a rub. My biggest advice would be, hey, you're gonna live life a lot longer than you're gonna play sports, play basketball. If something's bothering you, and as athletes, we're wired to kind of be able to handle it on our own. Step up, right? This is not something, mental health and addiction and stuff, it's not something you can handle on your own. You must share. You must find whoever that person is, you know, whether it's an aunt or an uncle or mom or dad, a brother, a friend, to really confide in. And that's hard. It's really hard bearing your soul to someone of the things that are going on inside your head. But once you do, you know, you've got some company there. You've got someone who knows that you're struggling a little bit. So just know you can't handle all the mental health and addiction stuff. You can't handle it on your own. You must seek some kind of help, and just talking about it sometimes can be really liberating.
Again, appreciate that and definitely agree. You know, the NBA has definitely been a leader in this space. You know, last week, actually, we talked with David McFarland, a member of our advisory board and also part of the National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention.
That's great.
He talked about the need for national initiatives across the board, bringing all the leagues together, not just the leagues, because in some cases, you know, like in the NFL, you're dealing with guys now that are 22, 23 by the time they've gotten there. They could already have significant mental health and wellness issues. They could already have opioid addiction, you know, by that point. So the need is to take it further back than that, you know, to get into high school sports, college sports, even youth sports, to start with not only providing the educational resources necessary and the awareness that's necessary, but then building out basically a mental wellness ecosystem to help these athletes through what are critical periods of anybody's life, let alone an athlete, you know, going through everything you go through. So,
right.
I love that.
And to remove some of that stigma,
you
know, to get guys more comfortable with addressing their, you know, those issues that they're dealing with. I usually have 2 questions at the end, but you've answered one of them, I think, better than we could have asked you to answer it.
Okay.
Ready. But I'll ask a question just about what role do you think, you know, athletics play? Kind of role can athletics play in the health of not only young people but generally society? I mean, what role do you see athletics playing in that in society?
You know, obviously I'm biased. I'm a team sports guy. I'm a sports guy, and you know, that's my only real point of reference. My dad was a basketball coach, and I grew up just wanting to do that. I think balance is very, very key. You know, I grew up a basketball addict, and that's all I did. I didn't care about school. I didn't really care about anything else. And I think because I was a good basketball player, people were okay with that. And therefore, I went 32 years of my life all through playing and never really diversified myself at all. I mean, I'd play a little golf in the summer, but I didn't grow as a person socially. I don't think socially or very much mentally from about age 18 to 35. And so I think I missed a lot of time. Bills being paid for me, everything being done for me, all the stuff we talk about and all the rookie transition, all that stuff. And, you know, it's hard to understand when you come from nothing, or, you know, a lot of our backgrounds in sports, when you don't have parents who invest, how the hell are you going to know how to invest? They don't have enough money to invest, well, I mean, so there's a whole other aspect to all of this, but yeah, I think that sports, look, it teaches you a lot. It teaches you a lot about life. And if nothing else, it teaches you how to get along with other people from different backgrounds and races and creeds and religions and all of that. It really is the most beautiful thing. And I think a lot of times when you play sports as a kid, it thrusts you into mixing with different races and different backgrounds. And when you don't do that, I have a lot of people that I know personally in my life, some of my good friends who it's almost like it was a developmental issue and they weren't exposed to those types of things as a young person. And when you're not that you can't catch up, but you're playing catch up to understand people that don't look and sound like you.
Soledad O'Brien talked about that exact thing in our first episode, now that I think about it.
Good. Yeah, I love her.
We're fans as well. She is also an advisory board member of the PCL.
She's one of my Twitter buddies too.
Yeah, y'all all. Yeah, she's one. She's always on the.
yeah, she's on there.
So, just as a quick follow-up question, though, to what you were just laying out, for younger athletes, how important is it then to take the education maybe a little more seriously, since your life post-sports is going to be a lot longer than your life in sports?
Well, I'll say it like this. Had I had my degree, and I left school after 2 years, I never went back. Had I had my degree, probably when I, got in trouble and went to rehab and got out, I would have been able to go coach in college somewhere. I could have gone and been on somebody's bench. You can't, you don't have a degree. So I have some regret about that. I definitely have regret about not taking my schoolwork seriously. I always made good enough grades. Good enough, I said, not great grades. But yeah, the education it's everything. I've been making up for time for real the last 4 or 5 years, trying to learn, trying to read as much as I can. I watched a lot of television and did a lot of stuff that, just background noise for a long time. And so, yeah, the education, that's what's going to get you through. And that's what's going to make you, I think, make good decisions in life.
Wow. That's awesome. I've got my last question, and it's a light question. It's simply a question about the morning. Do you have a morning routine? When you get up in the morning, is there something that you have to do?
Really and truly, I get up. I prefer to have coffee, but then if I can or I don't have to. But then normally I go straight to the swimming pool, and I get that 45 minutes to an hour of really sorting out in the water what I'm doing today, what are the pressing things I need to do, file away a couple things that, I need to have thought about. And then when I get out, it's just like, for whatever reason, it's much like after practice. You went in, you did something good for yourself for that day, put in some time to go and really take on the day.
Right.
Not being able to do that kind of messes with me. But so I get up and I'm walking now, doing all that. But yeah, that's it. Waiting until later in the day does not work well for me. It just doesn't. So if I get up and go do that, I'm golden. And I feel very fortunate to have found that.
My last question, Rex, what are you most looking forward to doing post-quarantine?
It'll sound really silly. The first is hug my mom. I went and took her food yesterday, Mother's Day. I left food and waved at she and my father from down in the driveway. So, things like that. Hug my girls. They're in Phoenix. I haven't seen them in a couple months. But just selfishly, I played a lot of basketball over the years. If I played 1,000 basketball games, I know I had some bad losses, but hearing the squeak of the shoes and all that, I don't think I ever had a bad day in the gymnasium. Right. And I want to get back to hearing those squeaks and the music and the players. And also, I don't know about this playing in front of no fans because these fans are going to hear some shit
Yeah, they've never heard, right?
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for.
Right.
Guys kicking the ball in the stands and
Right.
getting thrown out of games. It'll be like a script. You know it. Come on,
Right.
man.
Yeah, they're gonna have to have. They're gonna have to have a hell of a delay. I'll tell you that. That delay is gonna have to be crazy.
That's right. That's right. You're gonna hear some shit. Yeah.
Well, this
That's
has been great, Rex. For those that want to check it out, Block or Charge, Adult Swim, Thursdays,
Thursday
right?
Nights. Yep,
Yep.
Thursday nights live. We do it live. It's crazy.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. We appreciate you, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Anytime.
Absolutely.